Caught my wife's sister pressing herself against me in the garage. Now my wife feels hideous and doesn't trust being touched. I think my wife Jenna is absolutely gorgeous, but she has some really negative body image issues. This is in large part because of her sister Mary, who is very conventionally attractive, as opposed to Jenna's more unconventional but, emo, striking beauty. Mary was a successful model until a couple years ago and now works in the fashion industry. In our early days of dating, when I would tell Jenna she's beautiful, she would always say, "Just wait until you see my sister." When I did finally meet her family, she would randomly press me for weeks to talk about her sister, whether I thought she was more attractive than her, etc. I always told her the truth, that I think Mary is attractive in a boring way, and that I think my wife is much more beautiful and interesting to look at. She wouldn't let it go until I confronted her about how uncomfortable it made me and asked her what was going on. This is when she told me that she always had a chip on her shoulder about her looks because of being compared with her sister growing up. They fell into the classic smart one/pretty one dynamic their whole lives. She also said Mary had a habit of being flirty with all of her exes, and warned me that it would happen to me eventually. She then started sobbing and begging me to not cheat on her with her sister, to which I forcefully said I would never cheat on her with anyone, let alone her sister. I've been crazy about my wife since day one, and there's literally no woman on earth who could come close to her. I honestly didn't believe her about the flirting at first. I assumed it was just an extension of her insecurity, but I was wrong. Whenever we get together with my wife's family, Mary always finds ways to touch me and make little innuendos/comments about me or my body. It's super uncomfortable for everyone, especially my wife, and I've called her out on it before. She'll cool it for a while but eventually start doing it again. It's been 6 years of this, and every time it happens my wife is upset for days and I have to do a lot of reassuring. On to the current problem. A few days ago we were at my Mill's birthday party, and Mary asked me to help her grab some things from the garage. As soon as we walked into the garage, she turned and pressed me up against the door with her whole body and started trying to kiss me. I immediately pushed her off and asked her what the fuck she was doing. She started giggling and saying she was just doing what we both had been thinking and kept insisting, "You know you want to." I told her she was out of her mind and ran out of there. I went straight to my wife and told her we were leaving. The whole ride home she was asking me what was wrong. I wasn't sure whether to tell her because I knew how much it was going to hurt, but I also thought Mary would probably try to spin it as me making a move on her, so I knew I had to just say it. I told her everything and she cried the whole way home. For the last several days Mary has been calling and texting my wife doing exactly what I thought she would do, even telling my wife that I said she, Mary, was the hottest girl I've ever seen, which I had to assure my wife a million times that I did not and would never say, even though she believes my account of the situation. She's been a complete wreck the last several days. She's hardly eating, she pulls away from my touch when I try to hug her or just hold her hand, she says she feels hideous and disgusting and I don't know what to do. This is the lowest I have ever seen her, and it hurts to see how much she's hurting. I have no idea what to do to help her heal from this. My in-laws definitely enable her behavior. She's the golden child, they brag about her constantly, even though my wife is literally a neuroscientist. Their mom was a pageant queen and she was their dad's much younger Rofi wife. Honestly, we may have to go no contact with all of them. Update 1. I realize that I have literally never had a chance to check in with myself after these things happen, and I've actually been holding a lot of frustration and resentment about it all. I've been harassed for years and it has either been brushed off or it's been eclipsed by the impact it has on my wife. I don't blame her for it, but this has been a good lesson in me not burying my feelings for the sake of others, even for her. I also want to clarify a couple of things that came up. Several people asked about how my wife's family feels about all this, and I explained in a comment that her parents are toxic and treat Mary as the golden child, even though my wife is a freaking neuroscientist, amazingly talented musician, speaks 3 languages fluently and another 2 conversationally. My wife and her family are seriously the only people who don't seem to understand how exceptional she is. I remember meeting one of my wife's family friends and talking to them about her research, and they said, "Oh wow, her parents just told us she works at a university." Whereas my parents literally introduce her as the family genius to everyone. It makes me so fucking angry to think about how her asshole family has stolen her shine her whole life. She's literally a Renaissance woman, but all they care about is looks and money. Some folks ask me why I would ever put myself in a situation alone with Mary given everything she's done. I have no good answers for that other than I never thought she would actually try to do anything. That possibility just didn't exist in my head. I realize now that I should have seen this would happen eventually, and that I should have been less concerned with keeping the peace and more concerned with shutting Mary's shit down before it escalated to this point. Hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, onto the update. The night I posted, I told my wife that if she wanted to try to repair her relationship with her sister I would respect that, but that I don't feel comfortable being around her for the foreseeable future. I said Mary has obviously been deeply jealous of my wife her whole life because she is a hollow, ugly person whose entire value has an expiration date while my wife actually has substance. I said that I think her whole family is toxic and has done nothing but put her down her whole life, but that only she can decide whether she still wants them in her life. I also told my wife that while I don't blame her for her emotional reaction, her insecurity is something that she needs to work on for our relationship to be healthy. What Mary did was sexual assault and she's been sexually harassing me for years, but I have consistently put aside my own feelings about this problem because of how it affects her, and that has prevented me from getting the support that I need, too. I told her that her reaction only serves to punish herself and me for her sister's behavior, and there's no reason to give her that kind of power. I also told her something that a commenter said that really resonated with me: the only people who have ever considered her second best are her and her family. Everyone else sees her for who she really is. She was crying the whole time and agreed that she needed to go to therapy to work on her insecurity. We were able to find a therapist who specializes in body image/self-esteem issues to work with her individually, and we're looking for a couples therapist too. My wife sent a message to her parents and sister that explained exactly what happened and told them she would reach out to them if she ever feels ready to repair their relationship. We blocked all of them everywhere, but Mary has of course been spamming my family and our friends with nonsense, claiming I attacked her, I'm a drug addict, I abuse my wife, all kinds of bullshit that, thankfully, nobody believes. My wife is still down in the dumps, but I can see that things are getting a little better. She's eating and sleeping more and she's cuddling with me in the mornings again, which is nice. Now I'm planning a surprise getaway for us this weekend. We're going to one of our favorite places and I'm going to wine and dine her and try to make her feel like the goddamn queen she is. I want to thank you all again for your help. You really helped me understand the severity of the problem, and again, thanks for helping me connect with my own feelings about all this. Update 2. It feels like things are mostly settled, and I'm really hoping this will be my final update. First, I want to say that I've gotten so many questions about who Mary is, and I'm just not going to say. Suffice it to say that she's never been household name famous, but she made a living solely on modeling for about a decade from what I understand, so she must have been popular enough that fashion people might know her. I really don't know how that whole world works. But emo, it doesn't matter how many names you drop, you're not famous if you don't have a Wikipedia page. Also got lots of comments that, mostly, jokingly called me a simp, and I can't argue with that. I totally am a simp for my wife. She's the coolest. I hope you all find a love that makes you feel this way. Okay, I think that's it. Here is the actual update. My wife loved the getaway weekend, we had a blast, and by the end of it she said she felt like herself again. For a few days after we got back things were really quiet, so we were hopeful that Mary had finally given up, but I felt uneasy about it all. Many of you warned me that Mary would try to interfere with my work, and while I initially dismissed it, I figured I would reach out to my boss just in case. I've been working at the same company for almost 10 years and she's heard me vent about Mary before, so I didn't have to explain too much. My boss just reassured me that she knows my real character and would let me know if Mary tried anything. As you predicted, Mary did try to contact my boss a couple of days later, and the following is a recounting of what my boss told me. Apparently Mary said that I needed to be fired because I was a predator and claimed to have proof that I assaulted her. My boss said that was a very serious accusation to make and asked Mary to explain what proof she had. Mary claimed there was a camera that caught the whole incident, and my boss asked her to send the video. Then Mary got flustered and said the police had it, so my boss asked her to send over a copy of the police report. Then Mary said it had a lot of private information in it, so my boss asked her to redact the private information and send it over. Then Mary said she didn't feel comfortable with that, and my boss told her that she could not take action against an employee based on word of mouth from a stranger. Then Mary shouted at her about victim blaming and hung up. Unfortunately, that was not the end of it. Last Wednesday, Mary somehow sent an email from my personal email account with a dick pic, not mine obviously, to the entire office. My best guess is that I must have left my email logged in on one of my in-laws' devices. She's definitely not smart enough to actually hack me. And I know this is completely beside the point, but of course she chose the weirdest looking dick I've ever seen. I played team sports all my life, I've seen a lot of dicks, and this was something else. It's honestly kind of funny to think about Mary googling gross penis or something and sifting through hundreds of images to find just the right one. I had to apologize to everyone on staff, and thankfully folks were surprisingly understanding. It's actually been kind of a nice bonding experience with my coworkers. I honestly didn't consider myself to be super well liked in the office, but it feels like everyone has been going out of their way to be kind to me, and it means a lot. Anyway, at this point it was clear we had to escalate things legally. Lee wanted to avoid it, but she forced my hand. My wife and I have a lawyer friend who helped us draft a cease and desist letter outlining her continued harassment and the material and emotional damage this is causing us. My wife then sent a message to Mary and my in-laws with a copy of the letter and made it very clear that we would pursue criminal and/or civil proceedings if her harassment continued. My wife's mom then called her crying and begged her to just let it go and leave Mary alone. My wife calmly explained that Mary is the only person responsible for this whole situation, and that their parents have always enabled her awful behavior. She also said something she later regretted but I think was pretty badass. Mary is going to stick you two in a nursing home and steal your money the minute she has the chance, and you deserve it. After the way her mom reacted, my wife is firmly settled on cutting off her family completely. This happened on Friday, and on Sunday Mary's best frenemy and sent my brother a message on Facebook to say Mary is going to leave us alone and to please not sue her. I told my brother not to respond, then just sat and enjoyed the idea that Mary was out there somewhere freaking out about the potential of having to actually face the consequences of her actions. It must be such a strange feeling for her. Since then, we haven't heard a peep from the grapevine. It feels like things are finally starting to go back to normal. My wife is starting therapy next week and will be starting couples therapy in a month or two. She wants to do some work on herself first. She's also taking a short leave from work to rest and recharge. I'm so proud of her for standing up for herself with her family and finally putting her mental health and well-being first. Update 3. My mill still tries to contact my wife every now and then, but she's made it clear to her family that if the first words out of their mouths aren't "I'm sorry," she isn't interested in a conversation. As you can see, the past 6 months have made my wife a badass. She has done some amazing work in therapy and her confidence is growing all the time. It's not just with her family, she's more comfortable asserting herself at work, with strangers, with friends, etc. She's even stopped putting up with some of my shit. To be fair, that shit is stuff like my leaving my socks everywhere around the house, but I'm seriously proud of her for telling me to cut it out. I'm becoming a more responsible and supportive partner because she's able to communicate her needs and expectations without feeling guilty about it. And I'm able to communicate things to her without intense emotions fully eclipsing the conversation. I didn't mention this in my earlier posts, but my wife does struggle with rejection sensitivity even outside of her family. Often if I brought up something that I felt needed to change, her emotional reaction to feeling like she did something wrong would be really intense, and instead of dealing with the problem, it would become about regulating her emotions. Now my wife has really good coping tools that allow her to talk about the problem without thinking she is the problem. And the biggest update. She's pregnant. We have a baby girl due in February. I am shitting my pants with excitement. We are going to love her so much and teach her that she is more than her beauty. She's going to have happy parents who love each other and work through issues as a team. The toxic cycle will be broken. Jenna's family doesn't know and she's not sure if / when she'll tell them, but if she does, there are going to be strong boundaries in place for how they can be a part of our daughter's life. And it'll start with family therapy. For now, she has one set of grandparents that will go to the end of the earth for her, and that's more than enough. My family has been absolutely incredible in their support and they're so excited for us. Things are looking better than they ever have. That's all, folks. Thanks again for your support on this wild journey. Hello everyone, I have come here for advice before and you were all incredibly helpful, and I could really use some support again. You can check my post history for the full story, but doctor, last year my wife, Jenna, and I had to make the decision to go no contact with her whole family. Her sister, Mary, 30F, sexually assaulted me, in-laws defended her, and after some legal wrangling they finally left us alone. The situation wrecked my wife's self-esteem and tested our relationship, but we made it through. Jenna and I had our first daughter in February. She's amazing and we're doing great. We ended up moving away from Jenna's home state, NY, to mine, MA, to be closer to my family, and they've been incredibly helpful with the baby. We have not seen Jenna's family since cutting contact and blocking them everywhere, and we didn't tell them about the baby. Yesterday we received a letter in the mail from my mill and Phil. No idea how they got our address. Apparently my Phil has been diagnosed with late-stage cancer and is being told he could be dead in weeks. In-laws went on about how sorry they were for the way they handled the situation with Mary. They also apologized for the way they've treated my wife her whole life. Again, check post history, but basically Mary was the golden child and Jenna was an afterthought despite being super accomplished. They ended by saying they recently heard about the baby through the grapevine and want to meet their grandchild. To me, the apology seemed genuine. They went into detail on what they did wrong, apologized and expressed remorse, and explained what they should have done differently. They said they hope to earn our forgiveness with time and were willing to do family therapy to heal our relationship. Jenna is not having it. She feels like it's too little too late and doesn't want to respond. She also suspects that they're lying about Phil's cancer and just want to pressure us into reconciliation so they can meet the baby. It seems ludicrous, but I guess I wouldn't put it past them. I want to respect my wife's feelings around this, but I'm worried that if the cancer is real, she may regret not taking this opportunity for reconciliation before he dies. I expressed this to her, but she is adamant and I haven't broached the topic since. My instinct is to wait a few more days until the shock wears off to talk about it again. I just don't know what the best way to approach it would be. I certainly don't want to force my wife to do anything she doesn't want to do, but I feel like she's not thinking clearly about this right now. It also must be noted that our baby is still struggling with sleep and we're both tired and emotional all the time, so I feel like this might be influencing how she feels about all this. What should I do here? Should I try again or just let it be? Edit, people, stop being mean to me. I too am tired and emotional and my feelings are getting hurt. I am not forcing my wife to do anything. I brought it up one time. I know this is not about me. I don't personally care either way, I just want to support my wife. I intend to tell her I am here to listen / talk about it if she wants to, but I fully support her decisions around this. She has a great therapist she trusts and I'll be here to support her however I can. To be clear, I will absolutely respect whatever decision she makes. I just feel like the news is so fresh and we're in such an emotionally complex place as it is that she may not be thinking clearly about it. A similar situation happened to a friend of mine and he regretted it for years, actually turned to alcohol pretty hard for a while after. My wife has worked really hard to improve her mental health and I worry about how the regret might set her back. Although I suppose if her family is actually lying/manipulating us, that would set her back too. I just don't know. Would it be Terry Blay to bring it up again in a few days just to see if she feels differently? Edit. I've also thought about asking my parents to take the baby for a couple of days so we can get away and recharge. Maybe just getting my wife in a better headspace would allow her to think things through more carefully/less reactively. I asked her one time and haven't brought it up since. I am not badgering her, and I'm here to figure out how to support my wife in whatever decision she wants to make. Oop, I hear you. And maybe it's not about asking her if she feels differently so much as giving her space to talk about her feelings around it some more. But maybe it's better to let her do that with her therapist first and just let her know I'm here to listen/think through stuff if she wants to talk about it more. To be 1000% crystal clear, if we never speak to/see them again, it will be no skin off my back. They're terrible. I just want my wife to be okay. They said they hope to earn our forgiveness with time. Now on to second story. Intervened when my husband's sister abandoned her sons. Now the family is upset as we prepare to alert authorities. Hey everyone, my husband, 34, and I, 36, are in a tough situation with my sister-in-law, Barbara, 41, and we need an outside perspective on whether we're overreacting or if our stance is justified. We're leaning toward the latter but are open to thoughts. Thanks in advance. Barbara has 4 boys, L17, O14, R13, and C7. Despite her having a rough history with bad relationships, her kids have always been well behaved. The only constant man in her life has been Reese, 48, her on and off husband who does nothing for her or the kids except work. He blows his money gambling, cheats on her openly, and relies on her for everything else. For 7 years, she's come to us, venting about him, swearing it's the last time, but always goes back. In 2020, after yet another huge fight, the entire family intervened. We sat her down, told her we were here to help with anything she needed, lawyers, a safe place for her and the kids, even handling the legal stuff if necessary. She agreed to kick him out, but within 6 months, he was back because he couldn't find a place to stay. This grown man, who has worked a steady job for 20 years, somehow needed help. Since then, things have gotten progressively worse. Barbara decided to stick with marriage counseling, even though the whole family urged her to leave. She's clung to the idea of honoring her marriage, despite the toxic environment. As a result, her kids have started to suffer. The eldest, L, started skipping school and smoking heavily. A few months ago, my husband got a 2 a.m. call from L, who said he was suicidal and afraid to act on it. When we got to their house, we learned he had told his stepdad the same thing, and Reese told him to just do it because no one would care. My husband, understandably, punched him in the face. We took L to the hospital and, after his release, brought him home with us for 3 weeks to help him recover. Eventually, L returned to his mom's house, thinking things had smoothed over, but they quickly fell apart again. Soon enough, the second oldest, O, began having issues too. For months, they'd been fighting constantly, and we didn't realize how bad it had gotten until we couldn't get in touch with either of them. Barbara had gone silent. My husband showed up at her house unannounced, something our family often does for fun, only to find out that she had washed her hands of L and O for being disrespectful and kicked them out. She had even turned off their phones and didn't know where they were staying. We found out that they'd been crashing with friends for weeks, trying to stay under the radar because they were embarrassed. We picked them up from school and brought them home with us again. They told us that their mom and stepdad had been bullying them, constantly fighting, and that they didn't feel safe oing back. Barbara admitted that she put them out but insisted things weren't as bad as they made it sound. Now, my husband and I want to go full nuclear, report this to CPS, the police, and anyone who can intervene. But the rest of the family wants to handle it internally. We feel like 2 minors were abandoned, and that deserves an extreme response. But the family is now saying we're overreacting, and at the end of the day, these are not our children. So, are we the assholes for wanting to report this situation and not leave it to family discussions? The 2 oldest boys are with us for now, but we're ready to escalate this. Update 1. I have to be incredibly vague because of the newly opened case, but here's the most important thing: all of our nephews are safe with us. The boys have always had a place here and have visited often since they were tiny, long before any of this chaos started. So while the transition has been emotionally jarring for them, the move itself was thankfully smooth. Now, as for Barbara and Reese, they're facing charges regarding their treatment of the boys. It was worse than we originally thought. Barbara seems remorseful, but my husband is still livid. He believes she's only feeling sorry now that everything's out in the open and consequences are on the table. Whether her remorse is genuine or not, I'm just relieved we took action when we did, because it's terrifying to think how much worse things could have gotten if we hadn't. Family-wise, everything is a mess. The entire family is split over this, and it's not even worth the text to go over the thoughts of those who oppose us. Those who have sided with us, however, have been a tremendous help. Even though there are a lot of family issues and the logistics are complicated, fuck it, we made the right decision. What I can share in more detail is that soon after I posted, Reese showed up at our house, demanding that the boys return home with him. They refused. I told him to leave, but he escalated things, got loud, aggressive, and started cursing at me and the boys. My husband wasn't home at the time, he was out picking up clothes and toiletries for L&O. I can only assume Reese felt emboldened by my husband's absence, because out of nowhere, he sucker punched me right in the mouth. And, Reddit, I'm not ashamed to admit, I saw red. I swung back. It wasn't smart, but I did. He wasn't expecting that. I'm nice and really easygoing, but I guess I forgot that. I jumped on him, and let's just say, he didn't expect a fight. I might not have landed the best hits, but he wasn't prepared for one at all. He scrambled out of there and sped off. I immediately called 911 while the boys called my husband, who thankfully was just around the corner. I'm fine, just ended up with a busted lip that looked worse than it was, though my husband insisted I go to urgent care. The police met us there, and that's when we reported everything, Reese's assault and the whole situation with the boys. Reese and Barbara were picked up the next day. And in the middle of all this shit, I found out I'm pregnant. Yup. While I was at urgent care, they ran a routine test and boom, positive. I had no idea. No symptoms or anything, but it's still super early.